Welcome to this new video on my channel. Today we're going to talk about the hidden rules of chess. If you are new to chess, you might not know these rules yet, but we're going to talk about castling, which essentially means you can move your rook and your king at the same time to get your king into the corner and make it feel more safe. We're going to talk about en passant, which is not a very well-known move between casual chess players. It essentially means that when you have two pawns next to each other and the opponent's pawn has moved two squares up the board, you are able to capture that pawn as if it were diagonally next to you. We're getting to that more later, of course, in this video, and I'm going to explain exactly how it works. And we're going to talk about all the different ways that you can draw a chess game. There are multiple ways to draw a chess game, so hopefully you guys are going to stick around and we're going to talk and learn together. So for the first part of this video, we're going to talk about castling. Castling essentially means you can move both your rook and your king at the same time to get your king into safety. That's essentially all it is. There are a lot of different rules and different situations that apply if it comes to castling though, and we're gonna go ahead over all of them. So first of all, I have this board set up here next to me, which is the starting position of a chess game. In the previous video I explained that all of the pieces have to be set up exactly like they are at the left of me right now in order for you to start a chess game. And we're gonna assume we're just gonna play a normal game. So these few moves that I'm gonna show you right now are moves that you'll see more often in a chess game, which are just a normal developing game. It starts with e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, bishop c5. So this is essentially just a very regular, if you are going to play more chess, you will see this quite often. It's just a normal game of chess. So in this position, we are able to do something that is called castling. And if I click on this king here, of course in the previous video I also mentioned that kings are able to move in every direction one step at a time. However, if you look at these chess.com, the suggestions of moves that I have available here is, of course, I can go to e2, I can go to f1, or in this position I can also go to g1. So you might think, okay, I can go to e2 and I go to f1. That makes sense to me, of course, because like I mentioned, the king moves in every direction one step at a time. So it can go to all of these squares if there were no pieces, of course, but you know, there are pieces, so you can go towards or through your own pieces. But there's a special one here, which is G1, which is the castling move. So in chess.com or on Lichess, any website you can play chess, you actually will get suggested moves. Because if you click here, you will get a suggestion of where the piece can move. In real life, you will not. So that's why it's important to realize how castling precisely works. So it works by going with your king 2 steps to the side and your rook lifts over that. That's essentially all it is. That's the basic rule of castling. Your king goes 2 steps to the side and your rook moves over your king. So yeah, this is the king side castling, because you can castle both sides. So you can actually castle towards the queen side. So we call it queen side and king side because obviously in the starting position, like I've just shown you, the king is on the e file and the queen is on the d file. So that means this is the king side and this is the queen side. So this is kingside castling, and we are gonna look at another game here that I also whipped up real quickly here, and this is essentially the same thing, but instead of kingside, we're gonna castle queenside. So now d4, d5, knight c3, knight c6, bishop f4, bishop f5, queen d2, queen d7. We have like a symmetrical position here. It's just for demonstration. This is obviously not the perfect way to play chess, but it's for demonstration purposes. Now we've moved all of our pieces between the king and the rook here. And once you have moved all of your pieces between the king and the rook, you are able to castle. So in this position, if you click this once more, you will see there's king d1 and there's king c1. And king c1 means you are going to castle, and it looks a bit strange maybe at first, but what this essentially does is, once again, like I mentioned, you shove your king 2 squares to the side, so 1 and 2, so you go from the e file to the c file, so 1, 2 to the side, and you bring your rook all the way across and towards the other side of the king. So in this situation, if you queenside castle, the king goes to the c file and the rook goes to the d file. That's what you have to remember here. And yeah, like I mentioned, there are a lot of different things and rules that apply to castling. You have to know certain things. You have to know when it is possible and when it is not. And we're going to look at a few different situations in which it is actually not possible to castle, or in which it is actually possible. So in this position, we have another basic board setup, another starting position here, and we're going to go through all of the moves here. So it is e4, e5, king e2. And that brings me to the first rule. Both the king and the rook cannot have moved yet in order for you to be able to castle. So if we proceed the rest of this game, let's say we just continue with playing and get all of our pieces into this position once again, you actually cannot castle here anymore. So now if, for example, bishop g4 is played, if you click this king right now, you will actually see on chess.com that the g1 square is no longer available as a move to go to. And that is because we have moved our king. We have moved our king towards the e2 square and then back to e1. And now we are unable to castle. This is no longer possible. If you would do this in a tournament game, you would probably see a referee come up to your game, or your opponent would probably call a referee, and it would be an immediate game over, because you cannot do that. So yeah, that is the situation, and this both applies to the king and the rook. So if I moved the rook, I would have also not been able to castle anymore. Very important nuance to realize. And we have another position here, d4, d5, knight c3, knight c6, knight f3, and knight f6. And in this position, there's actually a very obvious rule, which I assume you would have guessed by now, but you cannot castle when there are pieces in between your rook and king. So now I am not able to castle, because there's still a bishop in between my king and my rook, which... yeah, makes it kind of speaks for itself. I mean, yeah, I feel like I shouldn't have. I feel like I didn't need to explain this to you in order for you to still understand that this was the situation. But very important to be to mention nonetheless. And okay, we have another one. I'm just going to loop through all of these games and show you exactly when and when not it is possible to castle. So e4, e5, bishop c4, knight c6, f4, bishop c5, knight e2, and now queen h4. Another very important rule that you have to know is you cannot castle out of check. So if you are being checked, you are not able to castle if you are checked. I cannot go king g1 right now and simply castle and be happy. And there's actually another reason why I cannot castle in this position, which we're going to look at in the next game. We get almost precisely the same position, but now without the queen check. We just simply go knight f6, for example. This position, once again, you cannot castle. And the reason you cannot castle here is not because we're in check, but you cannot go through check as well. So you cannot castle through check. So what does this mean? Well, this bishop on c5 covers all of these squares, right? So this bishop obviously covers the g1 square. So I cannot castle when there is a piece that attacks a square between my rook and my king. And if I castled here, for example, I would have also placed my rook on g1. And when I place my rook on g1, there's a bishop actually attacking the king, which means you are in check after moving. And if you are in check after moving, it's checkmate, because you just let your king hang after moving, which is not possible in chess, because that means the game is over. So there's two reasons why I cannot castle here, and yeah, that's essentially it in terms of when you cannot castle. There's one more position I want to show you, which is this one. The same thing applies here. So once again, there's a bishop that attacks the d1 square. And because there's a piece attacking a square between my king and my rook, I am not able to castle right now. Because now the situation is a little bit different in comparison to the previous situation I showed. Now if I would have castled, which is not allowed, but if I would have been able to castle, actually only my rook would have been attacked, not my king. So it wouldn't be game over. But I'm still not allowed to castle here, because you cannot castle if there's a piece attacking a square between your king and your rook. So there you go, and yeah, that's essentially it. So now if I go knight f3, for example, I block this diagonal, of course, and yeah, now if he does whatever, let's say he castles, I'm actually able to castle both the king and the queen side again, because I haven't moved my king yet, I haven't moved any of these rooks yet, so I can go here, I can go here, both of them should be fine, so yeah. One of the best tips I can give you to get used to this situation, or this rule actually, is to just play games on chess.com or Lichess. I mean, that's essentially the easiest way to learn, because these rules really aren't that difficult, but you'll get the hang of it, and you'll get more experience with them if you just simply play the games. So yeah. The next rule I wanted to show you is the en passant rule, which is a rule that states if a pawn moved 2 squares up the board, you are able to capture it diagonally as if it moved only 1 square. And yeah, let's look at this example here to the left of me. This is a position, a very empty position, of course. There's only 2 pawns left, one of black and one of white. And in this position it is black to move actually. And yeah, once again, I have explained in the previous video exactly how pawns move. They move straight down the board and they capture diagonally. So if I were to go here, I would be able to capture diagonally, so exactly like this. And there's one special rule which states that if the pawn is still on the beginning row, so the 7th row or the 2nd row, 2nd for white, 7th for black, it is able to actually move 2 squares down the board. So instead of only moving 1, it is able to move 2 squares on the board. So if you look at this, if I go here, for example, let's say we push through with white, now black only is able to move 1 square, you see? So black is only able to go 1 square down the board at the same time. However, like I mentioned in the beginning, you were able to move 2 squares down the board. So we're able to go to e5 right now. And now comes the funny part. If the white pawn is next to the black pawn, at the moment the two squared rule applies. So now that the pawn has moved to e5 from e7 and white's pawn is next to it, you can capture the pawn of the opponent, so the black pawn, as if it were still on the e6 squares, as if it only moved 1 square. So we are able to go here. This is essentially all there is to it. This is en passant. And the same thing obviously applies to the other side, of course. So if, for example, here I'm playing with white, it's my turn. If I go to d4, now there's en passant, and you're actually able to capture that. And yeah, that is essentially it. The easiest way, I think, to explain or to remember this is that, for example, if I go here right now, if the opponent's pawn moves beside your pawn, you are able to capture it as if it only moved 1 square. That is the best. That is, at least I find that the best way to think about it. So now that there's a pawn that has moved beside my pawn and it moved 2 squares at once, I'm able to capture as if it only moved to d3. Right, so that's exactly what is happening here. So now you're able to capture like this, and yeah. Actually, the funny part about this position is you have to push, otherwise it's winning, or it's a draw. Now it's winning because the king is no longer in time to stop the pawn from promoting. Yeah, I mean, hopefully you guys understand this rule. If you have any additional questions, let them know in the comments, of course. And yeah, let's go to the next section. Okay, in the last section of this video, I wanted to show you all of the different ways you can draw a chess game. And there are a couple of different ways to draw a chess game, which are stalemate, which we already discussed in the last video, but I'm briefly going to mention it again in this video. There is threefold repetition, the 50 move rule, insufficient material, and a mutual agreement. Yeah, we have a position set up to the left of me again here, as we've been doing before in this video earlier on. And here, this position, white has just moved the queen to f7 or the king to g6, and black is now, it's now the turn of black. And in this position you can see that this is actually a stalemate. And the reason why this is a stalemate is because the queen covers all of the squares around the enemy king, the black king here. So the black king cannot go anywhere, and it is simultaneously also not being attacked. So it is not directly in check. If the queen were here, for example, it would be a checkmate. If the queen were here, it would be a checkmate. And if the queen were on h6, it would actually just be a check. It could go to g8. So that's a stalemate, and a stalemate means the game is a draw, where checkmate is a win if you attack the king and you refuse him to play any other move, and the king of the opponent, so the black king, cannot move. And in stalemate it is actually a draw because the king cannot go anywhere, but it is also not being attacked. That is the first way to get a drawn position on the board, and the second way is a threefold repetition. And a threefold repetition happens when the same position occurs 3 times, so exactly the same position. So when none of the pieces, or actually all of the pieces, are on the same squares, 3 moves in a row, or not even in a row, but 3 moves in the same game, it is a draw. It could be a draw. So if you are playing a board game, so for example you're playing in a tournament, you have to actually go towards the arbiter and mention that there has been a threefold repetition, and then you can claim a draw. In a chess.com game, it actually happens automatically, which means that when this position occurs on the board, it will automatically be a draw. So here I have a game which, I mean, this doesn't, we don't really have to go through this game entirely. It's a Ruy Lopez, that's the opening, you don't have to know that. But this game is just a regular game which is played between 2 players, and we get into a position where there are not a whole lot of moves to make anymore. So in this position, the position is very stuck. It's very closed. Everything is closed, and there's not a whole lot of progress to be made by either black nor white. So what can you do in a situation like this? Well, in this particular game, King G7 was played, then King H2, King G8, King G1, King G7, King H2, King G8, and King G1, and then King G7. And as you can see by the chess.com UI, it is a draw. And like I mentioned, in a tournament game, let's say you play this game over the board somewhere at your local chess club, this could be a threefold, and you have to claim the threefold. So you have to say to the arbiter, if you're playing an official game, or to your opponent, I claim the draw. In a chess.com game, it will be automatically a draw, and yeah, it's very simple. It just means if no piece has moved compared to the previous position, and the position occurred 3 times in the same game. It doesn't have to be 3 times in a row. It can be 3 times in the same game, so there can be moves in between. It's a draw. So yeah. The next one I wanted to show you is the 50 move rule, and I have another game here. Once again, I'm not going to go too much into detail about how this game went, but there's a lot of piece movement, and yeah, well, there's a lot of pieces going here and there, and at a certain point we get into a position where a lot of pieces have been traded. So here it's quite equal, you know, as everything is quite equal. There's 4 pawns for both. There's 2 bishops and 2 rooks on the board, and of course 2 kings. So in a position like this, so a 50 move rule essentially means that when there has been 50 moves in which there hasn't been a pawn move, nor there has been a piece get taken off the board, it is a draw. And it happens very rarely. I think I've never had a game in which I had a 50 move rule draw. So yeah, and I've been playing chess for a couple of years quite intensively right now, so it doesn't happen quite often. But yeah, so in this game you can see that from this moment forward, it is move number 46 at this point, and well, the game continues up until move 90, and yeah, you can see there's a lot of movement, and the rook gives checks here and there, and the funny part about this is that there is actually no threefold repetition in this position, because I think the king goes to a different square each time. Might also be the case, but yeah, we're just gonna assume that it's not the threefold repetition here. It's just the 50 move rule. Yeah, this continues for a little bit, and at a certain point it is a draw. Yeah, like I mentioned, this doesn't happen a lot. It happens very rarely, and it basically, like I mentioned, it is a move. It's a rule in which there have been 50 moves without any progress, no pawns moved, no pieces on the board, and then you can claim a draw. Same as the threefold repetition, you have to claim the draw if you're playing an official tournament. In chess.com, it will happen automatically. The next one I wanted to show you is insufficient material. Insufficient material essentially means there's no more pieces in order for you to make to win the game. So in this position there is a black king and a white king, and a white pawn and a black pawn. The white pawn is on the fifth row, and the black pawn is on the 3rd row, and the king goes here, and the king goes here, and as you can see, this is basically a complete draw. If I go here, 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 and here, there's pretty much nothing you can do. You can give a check here, for example. Let's say you give this check here, and it's still a draw. There's no way to reach the pawn, so you know. This is a complete drawn position. The reason this is a drawn position is because two kings cannot mate each other. I mean, they simply can't. So you need pieces in order for you to win the game. The next position I wanted to show you is this one, which also comes down to the insufficient material. And one of the things that is very crucial in this position is the fact that now that there's a bishop, it is still a draw. And the reason why is because with a bishop and a bishop alone, you are unable to checkmate the enemy's king. So in this position, white obviously has a pawn. If white could somehow miraculously get this pawn to the other side of the board and promote it into a queen, white would be completely winning. However, there's a king in the way, you cannot do that. So there is only one way here for white to draw the game, which is king g2. And the reason this works is because this bishop, although this bishop is on the board, it is unable to defend this pawn right now. In endgames where you have only a bishop or only a knight and you want to win the game, or exactly, I gotta say it differently, if in endgames where you have a pawn and a bishop and a knight and you want to win the game, you need to keep hold on the pawn. If you lose the pawn, the game is a draw, because with only one bishop or only one knight, you are unable to checkmate your opponent. So in this position, you have to keep hold on to this pawn in order for you to win the game. However, you are unable to do so because you cannot. There's no way to get to this square immediately, and there's also no way to go to d6 because the pawn of white is of course in the way because we capture diagonally. So if you go here, you capture, and of course your bishop is gone. So a very nice thing to know is you cannot mate with only a knight and only a bishop. And insufficient material means in this game, if you go here, for example, here and here, this is just a draw. This game is over. There's nothing to do here. It's a draw. The last way to draw a chess game is to come to a mutual agreement, which is probably the most frequently seen draw in tournament play. So when you are a decent player, if you are somewhere below between like 1600 and 2000 FIDE, for example, you will realize that in some positions the game is simply a draw. You cannot win. There's simply no way to win a game, and it's going to be a draw. So you can offer your opponent, hey, do you want to draw? And sometimes it also isn't as clear, but you still offer a draw just because you think your chances might be a little bit worse than your opponent's. And yeah, that's all of the ways to draw in a chess game. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode, and yeah, very important to know these hidden rules of the chess game. You need to know all the basic rules of a game in order for you to get better. The only way we are going to get you to 2000 is if you know all of the even hidden rules in this game, of course. And next week we're going to go towards how to actually begin a game of chess. So what do you need to do in the beginning phase of a game of chess? And yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode, and see you in the next one. Bye.